Hi everyone, Emily here from Emily Reads, and today I have for you my November wrap up. But before I go into my November wrap up, I'm just going to give you kind of like a life update. So since Thanksgiving, life has been a little challenging for me. My refrigerator died Thanksgiving, but I kind of suspected it Thanksgiving evening because the compressor kicked on in the morning to make things cool, and then I never heard it again kick on. Um, so Friday morning when I woke up at like 5 in the morning, because that's just when my body wakes up early, I opened the refrigerator door and I had stuck like a thermometer thing in there overnight, and the temperature was 60 degrees. So all of my Thanksgiving leftovers went into the garbage, and I ran to the store, not for Black Friday sales, but to get another cooler because I had a full freezer. So got a new fridge Monday, and then last night, which was Saturday night, excuse me, Saturday, the 2nd of December, my new fridge, dies on me. So, um, it was an outlet issue. The outlet cover didn't fit right on the outlet, so then one of the screws was loose. So, fortunately, it was an easy fix, and I didn't have to live out of coolers again for a second weekend in a row. Throw onto that, on Thanksgiving, I woke up with pain in my lower left leg, and I started to get some redness. And I know better, so I've had cellulitis before. I also, in 2021, after my gallbladder surgery, I developed, fortunately, it was only a superficial blood clot, but I did develop a blood clot in my right leg that later got infected to the point where it was infected from my groin all the way down to my leg. So I got admitted and put on IV antibiotics. So, like, I know better. I know better, but I was in denial and didn't want to go to the ER over Thanksgiving weekend. And so finally, Friday or Tuesday after work, I was like, you know what, I got to go to the ER. So far, the news is that I don't have a blood clot. I do need to have another ultrasound like in a week or 10 days from last Tuesday, just to confirm that there is no blood clot, because the doctor said some people will think that they don't have a blood clot. The initial ultrasound will reveal no blood clot, and then they'll go home. They'll think they're fine when actually there probably was a blood clot, and then things end up really badly. Blood clots can dislodge, could go travel to your heart, your lungs, your brain. So not good things. So right now, everything's all clear. Um, so, but I was diagnosed with cellulitis, given an antibiotic to take 4 times a day. And if the infection gets worse, then, or you spike a fever, the instructions are go back to the ER. Well, Friday night, the infection, the redness and the swelling had traveled up past my knee, up into like the middle of my thigh. So I went back to the ER, and that doctor thinks that it's not cellulitis, but it's either an infection, right, in the tissue right underneath my skin, which women, for some reason, he said, are more prone to getting, or there's a problem. I have bad varicose veins. It's because I've been overweight, and like my mother had very bad varicose veins. So genetics also does not work in my favor. Um, so it could also be an issue with how like fluids is carrying back and forth in my veins. So, but all my blood work looks good. So that's good news. The blood work looks good. So, how like pain is much better than what it was. It's still a little tender, but I'm a side sleeper, and it was really painful sleeping for a time. So that has been the end of my November. I'm really hoping that my December end will go so much smoother. I've had a history of having bad Decembers too. Um, my mom passed away on Christmas Day in 2009. So holidays can be a little tricky for me sometimes. So we're really hoping that December is a much better month for me. But let's talk about November and what I read. November, I read 10 books. for a total of 3,405 pages. And my average rating was 3.6 stars. Sorry, my asthma has decided it wants to kick up. So let's get into the books. I've got my iPad here to help me remember what order. That's why I'm looking down. I have my iPad that helps me remember what order I read them in and what rating I gave them. Okay, so the first book I read in November was Killers of the Flower Moon by David Grann. And this is the story of the Osage murders and the birth of the FBI. And obviously there is a movie starring Leonardo DiCaprio. Sadly, I don't remember the name of the female lead who plays Molly. And then Martin Scorsese directed it. So this is a narrative nonfiction. I normally don't read nonfiction. The book club that I'm a part of, we chose to read this book. And I'm so glad we did. I'm so glad I read it. And so basically in the 1920s, the Osage Nation on a reservation, they struck oil and made them quite wealthy. And there was a system in place where Native Americans had to have guardians of that money. So Native Americans were not allowed to make their own decisions about their own money. Native American adults were not allowed to make decisions about their own money because people felt, oh, they can't handle that. They're just like children. They can't control their own money. When white people were like blowing their money and no one criticized it. So how horrible is that? So it's just this horrible situation. And then Native Americans just started dying in very unusual circumstances. Like it was very clear that they were being murdered. And so who's committing the murders? And so private eyes were hired, detectives were hired, police were brought in, and they didn't solve it, and or they themselves, people who were beginning to investigate it, were also being targeted. So the FBI under J. Edgar Hoover steps in and they do investigate. It is horrifying what happened. The author estimates that this situation, like this book covers mainly Molly is the female character. She marries a white man, and her sister, two of her sisters, her mother, her brother-in-law, all died, either obviously murdered or suspected poisoning. And so it really, we really only get what happened with that family in that case because of just historical records and what has survived. But the author suspected towards them, he says, probably hundreds of Native Americans were killed for their money, which is horrifying. So I do think that this is an important read. I think it's good. I think there are probably other books that might touch on this a little bit better, but for an entry point, I think this would be a good book to read. And to me, it's impressive that that anyone in the Osage Nation would be willing to speak with someone outside of that reservation about what happened, because they are just so traumatized still to this day over what has happened, and understandably. But I do recommend this book. And I feel weird giving that one a star rating, just because of the topic that it covers. Hold on, my iPad decided to fall. Let me get it. Okay. And now I gotta plug it in. There we go. Sorry, my iPad does not keep a charge. So if it unplugs, it's a problem. It's an old iPad. All right, then the next book I read, I read a couple of stories in Side Jobs to prepare me for a small favor. So I'm trying to see if I can remember what I read. I read, do I have to find my table of contents? I read It's My Birthday Too and Heorot. They were enjoyable. I mean, I enjoyed them as I read them. Do I remember a lot of what happened in those stories? To be honest, not really. But I did enjoy them. And then I read Small Favor, which I have no idea what number in the Dresden Files it is. It's number 10. So this is number 10 in the Dresden Files. So I can't really talk too much about it. But we continue on with Harry, and I'm finally kind of beginning to like his relationship with Molly and how it's going and where it's leading. There was a kind of an icky moment, but I'm beginning to like it, and it was a good time. It was a good time as I read it, so I really enjoyed it. Again, it's hard to talk about Dresden Files. You get more of the world, you get more character development, and I'm liking it. Next, I read Iron Flame by Rebecca Yarros, one of my most anticipated releases of this year. So this is book 2 in the Imperium. I think if you're on BookTube, you know what this book is. So this is book 2. We get some answers about what happened from the cliffhanger from book 1. I felt like book 1, Fourth Wing, was a lot like Divergent. This book, at least the beginning part of it, felt very much like Harry Potter and the Order of Phoenix for me. And so I do think it was kind of a little slow to begin, but man, was it good. Chapter 35 was absolutely heartbreaking. There's a development with Undarna that there's a part of me that loves, there's a part of me that hates at the beginning. The development towards the end with Undarna, yes, I'm all there for it. There are some big questions that Rebecca Yarros is going to have to answer in book 3 about the ending of this book that I have problems with. It happened very, like, the last chapter I just felt was like, wait, what? Like, it was just a very sudden, abrupt ending, and there's a lot of questions and a lot of fallout and implications from that last chapter. So I'm looking forward to, like, I was worried, like, would I like Iron Flame? And I really liked it for very much different reasons. But because I had some questions, this is a 4.5 read. Then the next book I read is Swordcatcher by Cassandra Clare. And I was curious, like, I read her Shadowhunter series, and it was okay. I read Clockwork Angel, which is, I think, the first one in the kind of prequel series. And I read it and was like, this is too much like Shadowhunters. I felt like it was Shadowhunters, but in Victorian era. Like, just every plot element that was from the Shadowhunters was in the first one. And so I was just like, I really have no desire to read Shadowhunters 2.0. Like, I've already read it. So I was curious when I was hearing good things about this book. And for George R.R. Martin to blurb saying everything I look for in a fantasy, I was like, I know, and I'm curious. I don't think it's as good as the George R.R. Martin blurb, but I do think it was really good. And I do plan on reading book 2. I think, hold on, let me pull up my iPad here, because I don't remember what star rating I gave it. I gave it... Oh, come on now. Do I not? Where did it go? Sorry, my spreadsheet is kind of crazy, and it's all over the place. I gave it a 4.5 stars. So this follows Kel, and he is a sword catcher. And basically, what that means is when he was 10, he was taken from like an orphanage, and he's brought to the palace because he looks somewhat similar, and he's the same age as the prince, and he then is trained to basically take the prince's place if there is ever kind of like a threat to the prince's life. And so his role is to give up his life potentially for the prince. And there's an assassination attempt that goes wrong and he gets injured. And so in comes Lynn Castor, who she is she's an Ashkar, and the Ashkars really remind me a lot of Jewish people, because she basically lives in a walled-in area of the city. They have to live in a walled-in area of the city. They're very looked down upon because they're known for having some magical abilities in the past. And she wanted to study to be a physician. And also the Ashkar people, they're not allowed outside of their walled-in area after night. Like it's illegal for them to be out after night. And there are some terms in here that very much are drawn from Hebrew. Anyway, so Lynn Castor, she has wanted to study to be a physician, and she is a physician, but of course she's female, and so that's looked down upon. But she is brought in to help heal this sword catcher. And of course, so she is brought into this world of like political intrigue, and she is trying to learn more about healing, and also how can magic be used to help heal, especially because she wants to heal her friend. I did enjoy this. I gave this, I believe, 4.5 stars. I'm looking forward to reading the second book. It's not like oh my gosh, I have to have it, but I'm glad I picked it up. I do want to continue on with the series. And I think it was much better written than her Shadowhunter stuff. So I would continue on. Then the next books I read, I don't have anything to show. They were ebooks. So I read the Green Valley series by Noelle Adams. So that was A Holiday Setup, An Accidental Fling, and A Christmas Road Trip. And so I gave each of those 3 stars. They're cute, short romances. The first one, A Holiday Setup, basically the main female character, the main male character, they've known each other like all their lives, and he's kind of secretly had a thing for her. And she's just like, he just teases me and he's horrible to me, so I don't like him. And both their families get invited by her grandmother to her grandmother's house for the holidays, and it's kind of like forced proximity kind of trope. An Accidental Fling is a spinoff with where the main female character is at a spa to kind of rest and relax from work, and the main male character is one of her brother's friends. I cannot remember names, folks. I'm sorry. The main male character is the brother of one of her friends, and the main male character has been burned and loved, and he's kind of bitter. And they decide, and he's there at this retreat, this spa, because it's a new client of theirs for the company that he works for. And so they decide, let's just have a casual fling this week. And so then they hook up. And then lastly, A Christmas Road Trip. The main female character, this one was is the one that I enjoyed the most. The main female character was planning a road trip with her boyfriend, and her boyfriend breaks up with her. And the road trip was to just go to little towns in the East Coast, little towns, and she runs like a side business. It's like a second job for extra income, where she helps local artists and does like web development and helps them market their goods online. And so she just she wants to go from town to town during the Christmas season to meet local artists and, get some new artists on her and for her business. And the main male character is just a friend that she has known for much of her life. And he had never gone to college. He stayed at home. He lives with his grandmother and he works at the local coffee shop and just never had too much ambition, she feels like. But he goes along on this road trip with her. And of course, we learn more of his backstory. Then I also listened to Strawberry Shortcake Murder, which is book 2 in the Hannah Swensen series. And it was okay. I mean, I enjoy them. I gave this one a 3 stars. The thing that I don't appreciate about, like, in listening to the series, I didn't realize there are definitely a couple of derogatory comments about people's weight, like, oh, she's overweight, like she's got to lose weight. And other things that just are kind of fat shaming. But there was a comment in this one where, so the story is this woman, the side character, her husband is murdered. And the husband, he has anger problems and he took it out on his wife. So it's domestic violence. And one of the comments that is said is, there are women who leave those situations, and the courageous ones, they fight back. I had a really big problem with that because it takes great courage to also leave. Because statistics show that when a woman finally decides to leave, that is the time that is most dangerous for her. So it takes great courage to leave. So I had a big problem with that comment, which is why I only gave it a 3 star. I probably would have given it a higher rating if it had not said that in the book. So just be warned on that one. And then I read The Spanish Love Deception, which I gave this a 3 star. This is by Elena Armas. I gave this one a 3 stars. So the premise of this is Catalina Martin. She is going to be traveling home for her sister's wedding. She is Spanish. She works in New York, and her ex is going to be there because her ex is the brother of the groom, and they broke up in a kind of an ugly way. And we learn later in the book like how and why the breakup happened. And she kind of tells her family she has an American boyfriend. So enter in Aaron Blackford, who is her coworker and kind of her nemesis at work. And he volunteers to step in and pose as her boyfriend. And she wants to refuse, but she agrees. And so he goes along on this weekend to Spain, where her sister is getting married. So the reason why I didn't give it a high rating is I enjoyed their relationship. I enjoyed their banter. I enjoyed watching their relationship develop. What I had a hard time with, and early on we get how Catalina is she's sexually harassed at work. And that is a plot point, and it is a theme that is carried throughout the book on how she's treated at work and how she's treated professionally by men. There's also a backstory with Aaron that has some big themes. And the problem that I had is both of those stories, both Aaron's backstory and Catalina's, both are very compelling. And I felt like they were just underdeveloped. Like, I wish the author had picked one of those heavy backstories and really developed it, and then it would have been better, versus 2 compelling backstories that were superficially developed. So that's why I didn't give it as good of a rating. So there's that. And then lastly, I read The Cat Who Could Read Backwards. These are all part of my Clue Readathon books. This is the first book in the Cat Who Could series by Lillian Jackson Braun. So here we follow Jim Quillerin, and he's a newspaper reporter, and he apparently used to be really good and ends up in this small town for some reason. And he's going to cover the art beats. And of course, there is a murder that he then needs to solve. And he acquires a cat in this process, a Siamese cat, who then, becomes a big part of the series. So this book was published in 1966. And it shows. There are a lot of misogynistic views on women. Like they tremendously talk about their figure. I don't know if it's in this book, or I think it's actually in the second book. The second book came out in 1968. I just started reading the second book. I'm like 100 pages into it. I was hoping to finish it for the Clue Readathon. It didn't happen. But in one of the books, it literally gives the woman's measurements. And then says she had nice legs, and they were upholstered nicely. Because they described the chair that she's sitting on, and they said, and her legs are upholstered nicely. Yikes. So if those things are problematic for you, avoid. I did hear from people the first books are really kind of gross, but they do get better. So the first couple of books were written in the 60s. Then she stopped writing for a time. I don't know why. And then in the mid 80s, the series starts back up again. And I've heard that they get better. So fingers crossed that they do. I'm going to keep on because they're short. I mean, they're 190 pages, so they're short. And that is all I read in November. I don't think I did too shabby given everything that went on at the end of the month. And just given the fact that I am a teacher. But there it is. I'm hoping that you all have a wonderful weekend and happy holidays. Bye.